When I first saw this Tissot 1938 telemeter released and I saw videos online about it, it captured my attention. It captured my attention because I like the looks of it. It captured my attention because I've been looking for a Tissot as well. And I knew after seeing those reviews that I wanted to own one of these watches. But what I didn't realize at that time, or even when I placed the order for this watch, was how much I was actually going to wear it. Hello, you're watching James. My name is James, you're watching me, and I'm talking about watches. And I'm talking about a watch that has become one of my most worn watches in my collection, which is not what I was expecting. I knew that I would like it because it just captured my attention when I saw pictures and videos of it, but I didn't expect it to be my most worn watch. And it has become my most worn watch, this Tissot 1938 telemeter. When I saw it, it captured my attention, in particular this variation that I bought, because there's two of them. You can buy the one that I've bought, this white silver dial, or a black dial with gilt. And I like that black gilt dial. I think it's very striking and it has that real vintage element to it, but I'm not really a big gilt or yellow gold fan, so it wasn't going to be the one that I bought. And that was a bit of an issue because when I was looking at more reviews of this watch, that was the one that got most of the attention. So it gave me a little bit of trepidation when I went to buy this watch because firstly, it was hard to get lots of footage of it. It was not a watch that I could go out and see in person. But it is also not a cheap watch because when you look on the Tissot website, this watch retails at 3,300 Australian dollars, which that's a lot of money for me to spend on a watch. It's a lot of money for me to spend on a Tissot. If I'm looking at spending that sort of money, perhaps I'd be looking away from this particular brand. But that's why when this one popped up, the watch that I ended up buying for less than half of that on the used market, I just had to purchase it. And I'm so glad that I did. And when you look at the dial of this watch, when you look closely, I don't think the photos really represented how much details there were, because not only is this like a silver white dial, but there are multiple textures in that sort of outer ring. It's more of a soft brushing which sort of reflects the light. Within that inner circle area there's more of a matte finish. Within the two subdials there is concentric circles which you don't notice unless you look under macro, but it affects how the watch represents, especially when the light hits it. And then you see all the different colors that are used because there's multiple colors. The main numbers, the 1 through to 12, and the Tissot logo. And that main sort of chapter ring that has the 5 through to 60 are all in black. It's all painted onto the dial. There's nothing raised on this one. But then there is a spiraling red that you can see in the center, followed by blue on the outer telemeter track. And also those hands are blue. In fact, they're blued. The hour, minute, the chronograph hand, the running second hand on the left, and then the minute counter on the right are all blued. And when they capture the light, that blued hands, it really, really looks good. I think it just looks fantastic. But in some lights, it appears black. And then you tilt the watch, and then it bursts at you in this lovely blue color. And it works well with this watch because there is definitely some vintage elements to this. This is a watch that they have gone back into the back catalog, taken this design and brought forward. But what they've also done is change the size of this quite dramatically. They've increased the case size to 42 millimeters and it is 14 millimeters thick, which is quite thick, but it is a chronograph movement, so you kind of expect some thickness. The lug to lug is 50, the lug width is 22, and you can tell that there is a substantial sort of watch here because it is 102 grams. And you'll see on my 17 centimeter wrist, although the dimensions are larger, I think it looks fantastic. And as I've been mentioning, this has become one of my most worn watches, and I would only wear a watch if I'm comfortable with how it sits on wrist, no matter the size or the thickness. And this one, I've been loving it. Moving away from the dial, you'll see that it is a semi-boxed sapphire crystal with some AR coating. But then you look at the case, and the case is something that I really enjoy looking at because it is a mixture of brushed and polished surfaces that fixed bezel is polished, the tops of the lugs are polished, and then there's this lovely brushing to the sides of the case with a slight bit of downturn. And then we come to the buttons and the crown, and wow, what a feature of the watch these are, because most chronographs I look at, they sort of seem like the buttons have been stuck on there, like an afterthought, whereas these ones are integrated into the case. The chronograph buttons are polished and they have that lovely sleek sort of design to it, and that is also then carried into this crown. Look how thin it is. It's almost a vintage style crown, but it is one of the most comfortable watch winding experiences that I've had with this lovely knurling, and lovely just how it feels when you do turn that crown. It is easy to use, and I just think it looks absolutely fantastic. And one of the reasons why this watch is 14 millimeters tall is because of this Valjoux 05231 movement. The Valjoux movement has been around for a long time and it features in some very nice watches, and I'm so pleased to now have a watch with this movement, because not only does it look good and perform well, but it's just a nice experience to have on wrist. There is a little bit of rotor wobble, but that is offset by just the features of this one, because this one also has hand winding and hacking. Now at 102 grams, that's quite substantial for a watch on a leather strap. So you need a leather strap that not only looks good, but it really holds the watch nicely on wrist. And this lovely vintage style brown leather strap exactly does that. It not only looks good, but it holds the watch in a position on your wrist that makes it feel right. It makes it feel nice. It makes it fit into your wrist, but it just looks great as well. It is a really nice leather strap with a sort of raised section in the middle, nice stitching, and this 2-position deployant clasp, which is also got that Tissot logo, and it's got that sort of more vintage Tissot logo, which suits this watch really well. When I go to my watch box and I see this watch sitting there, I just want to wear it. Which is a bit of a problem because I've got so many other nice watches in my collection, but I'm not complaining because I like this watch. There are actually not that many dislikes, and there's only one thing that I would change. The one thing that I would change about this watch is the numbers on the dial. I would love to see them to be applied, just shallow sort of applied numbers. I think it would just add an element to it that would make this watch even better, because there's very few things that I dislike. That rotor wobble perhaps isn't perfect, but it's actually not that noticeable, and sometimes it's actually quite charming, because there are so many things I do like about this watch. I like how it sits on my wrist. I like the look of it. I like the quality of it. I like the design. I like the visual elements that just grab my attention. And what I like most is just how much I enjoy wearing it. If you have a watch in your collection that just draws you every time, then there has to be something special about it. And this watch has something special about it. But for 3,300 Australian dollars, that's still a big ask, especially if you haven't tried this watch on. How do you spend that amount of money on a watch that possibly might not be the watch for you? Well, it's difficult. And it's not something that I did, because I ended up buying this one on the used market, and there's not many of them on the used market, but they do come up. And I paid less than half of the recommended retail price. So if you are looking for one of these and you're concerned about that full RRP, or perhaps check out the secondhand market, especially now that it's been out for a couple of years. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Maybe check these videos out next.